Hi there. This lecture is on the land division systems in Georgia. Georgia is a unique state in that we have colonial meets and bounds sections and a rectangular system, but it is not the same as the U.S. public land system. This map, which there is a link provided later, is a map that depicts all of the various areas and flavors of the state of Georgia. You'll see that the pink here are the original headrights areas in the original Georgia counties. The original Georgia counties are in larger print and solid lines. The current boundaries are in smaller print and in dashed lines. And then over here we have each of the land lotteries of Georgia, which there are technically 7, but there were 8 lotteries. One was a sort of a cleanup and get rid of the leftovers. You'll notice this area up here was also ceded, which means given or relinquished, to South Carolina when they couldn't decide which river or which fork of the Savannah River the state line was supposed to have followed. Originally, Georgia was a colony which stretched basically from where the north and south boundaries are now westward to the Mississippi River. After the Revolutionary War, each state was expected to pay their share of the war debt, and the states that could gave up some of their lands to the federal government, which the federal government later sold and counted towards the state's war debt. The western boundary of Georgia was agreed upon by the state of Georgia, recognized at that time as a sovereign state, and everything west of that was ceded to the United States federal government, which then called it the Mississippi Territory. Now Alabama and Mississippi occupy what was the western portion of Georgia. This is a enlargement of that map, a particular area in North Metro Atlanta. You'll see here is the state capital, which was the new state capital, having moved there from Milledgeville. Here you see the original Gwinnett County in this shape. And notice that it went all the way over and touched Cobb County. Now, in the Great Depression, this little neck right here was given to Fulton County, which was part of original Henry County, and so that it could absorb Milton County, which went bankrupt. Milton County is now North Fulton County, Georgia, and one of the wealthiest areas of the state. What a difference 90 years makes. You'll see here the original county names, like you see Franklin, 1784. It was a headright area. It was east of the Oconee River. Oconee River being the boundary between the parts that were granted by headrights and the parts that were later divided into land lots. So you can also see the district numbers. So this is the 3rd district. Down here in the original Henry County, this is the 12th district that goes from southeast Atlanta down nearly to Jonesboro, for example. And that's how the state was originally divided, or at least a broad overview. So one thing that gets confused in the discussion a lot are Georgia militia districts. Now, you read about Georgia militia districts from the state bar paper and understand that they really have nothing to do with real property. They were militia or military management mapping units that were very loosely defined, loosely named. Yet they've become part of Georgia's legal description system because in large counties that were just meets and bounds counties with no land lots or districts, they're used because you might have 3 roads that lead to Harpersville in the middle of the county. And there might be several creeks that they just call Sandy Creek or Rock Creek. Those are 2 very common names. You also see Mud Creek quite a bit. So there might be several places in the county where the road to Harpersville intersects with Sandy Creek. So in order to try to resolve some of those ambiguities, people back in the day began referencing the militia district because everybody knew what militia district they were in back in the very early days of the state. So it was unlikely that you would be at the intersection of Sandy Creek and the road to Harpersville in more than one militia district because they were smaller units. Now, you've reviewed the map of Georgia militia districts, and I've looked at a part here just north of Carrollton. I've enlarged that map so that we could talk about it. A little circle here means a town, and those are named, as you can see there, like Mount Zion. Notice that you've got 1240 with an arrow drawn to it, so this would be the boundary of GMD, Georgia Militia District number 1240. Going up to the Haralson County line over here west of Mount Zion, you have this Militia District 1436. And often these Georgia Militia District lines were also property lines, and they were determined the boundary of the Militia District basically by whose property was taken in. Over here to the east, you see 1496. Now I point that out because today it's kind of hard to find what militia district you're in. And if you're surveying a piece of property in East Georgia, especially that where the militia district is part of the legal description, you need to confirm that you're in the right legal description, just like you would need to confirm that you're in the right land lot. So what we do is you can go to Georgia DOT county maps, just do any search, you'll find the page, find the county, and go to historical maps, and starting in about the 1980s, you can find maps that had the militia districts on there because funding is related to each militia district. For some reason in the DOT process, the militia district is taken into account. So they're on the older maps, but in the last 20 years, they've taken the militia districts off of the official DOT maps. Now the DOT releases a new official map of each county showing all the county and state and city roads, but not private roads, as well as major features, rivers, lakes, railroads, towns, etc. And they'll update those and release them every 4 to 10 years on average. This is one from 1995 of Carroll County. I didn't bring in the legend, but this long dashed line, or the line with long dashes in it, is a militia district boundary. And so you see over here on the west side of Mount Zion, which has apparently grown in the days, over here to the west, you can see it's faint, but they put it in there, GMD 1436, which is right over here. And you can see this east-west-south jog, well, that's right here. And then it's cut off from the map, but this is GMD 1006 over here. Of course, over here below us would be 1371. And over to the east of us is where we're in 1240 here around Mount Zion. So, this boundary's coming down, Mount Zion's now grown, and this is GMD 1240, this is GMD 1240. So that's how, if you need to determine which GMD a piece of property is in, find it on a map, relate that to a GDOT county map from the 1990s and earlier, and there you'll find the GMD information which you need. Within the state of Georgia, we all have counties, 159 of them. So how are county boundaries established? Well, let me give you a couple of clues. They're not established by the GIS department or by QPublic or by GDOT or by general reputation. County boundaries are established by the Georgia legislature and signed off on by the governor, just like any other act or law or resolution of the legislature. I'm pulling an example here of Union County simply because I worked on a project in Union County earlier this year, so I had the material close at hand. You read the book that Ingrid Shields put together, Georgia Counties, They're Changing Boundaries. And this is an excerpt from that book right here over on the right. This is what's listed for Union County. And you'll see that it was originally formed by Georgia Laws 1832, page 56. So you might wonder, what is Georgia Laws 1832, page 56? Well, in the Georgia legislature, or in the Georgia archives, you can search. Sometimes you'll find the actual image where they've scanned it. In other places, it was so damaged or hard to read that they have transcribed. And so we have an opportunity over here from the Acts of 1832. Right here, you'll see page 56 of those Acts. All the acts that they did, not necessarily in that day, but on page 56, they established several county boundaries that day. This must have been the original county day at the legislature. In particular, you come down to section 4 of the Acts of that day, and further enacted that the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th, and so much of the 6th and 11th districts of the first section as lies north of the mountains, and of the before mentioned line to be run, shall form and become one county, to be called Union. Up above it, you've got Forsyth County. I think you've got Hall County. Down below, you've got Lumpkin County. But this is how county boundaries are established, and it refers back to the district maps, how they were surveyed out by the district surveyors as authorized by the legislature, and that's exactly how the counties are plotted. Now, this was the act that established the original Union County right here. So, bingo. Union took from the following counties. Took additional land from Cherokee County. Well, this is the initial act. Then it took some land from Lumpkin in 1845. There you could find information on that. Laws 1845, page 74. Union then shrank a little. They gave up some land that helped form Fannin County in 1854. You can find that in 1854 laws, page 298. Gave up some land to Gilmer County that had got orphaned by Fannin County, coincidentally. Also gave up some land to Towns County 3 different times. This right here becomes what establishes Union County today, unless something's happened since that book was printed. So, to define a county boundary, you go to the legislature, or go to the acts of the legislature in that book, Georgia Counties, and they're changing boundaries. Find that county, find the history, then go back to the archives and research the legislative acts. It can be tedious. Now, is that something you'll encounter as a surveyor? Not often, but it might be more often than you think. We probably involve once a year in my business in establishing a county boundary somewhere, and often because it's a little bit contested, or because in the landlocked areas, the county line may run from a certain point to another certain point and sever a landlot. And they want to know for tax purposes, for example, if it's supposed to be a 40-acre landlot and both counties are taxing for 30 acres, then they may want the whole land lot surveyed and the county line established so that they can only pay taxes on 40 acres instead of 60. It also becomes very important if you're near a county boundary and you're developing property and subdividing, because most county ordinances say that you can't have a new lot that's severed by a county line or municipal boundary. So right here, this is not in the slide material, but you need to know that city limits, which are not obviously the same as a county boundary, they're established by county charter. And the minutes of each city hall should have somewhere, even though it's not common, they don't know it always, a list of all of the acts of the city and the process that they've gone through. Oftentimes that requires an act of the legislature. So there may be a bill number or a resolution number where the legislature has extended to a certain city all of this highway and the property on the west side, etc. So, city limits and city boundaries are not as historical as the county boundaries. They can be a lot more tedious because obviously you can have a big difference in ordinances, such as something as simple as different lot sizes or setbacks, all the way to things that have been contested based on city limit boundaries, or ordinances on alcohol use, consumption, and even adult entertainment, where it might be allowed in a city but not in a county, and they're saying that if certain businesses in the city so that they can engage in one of these activities, if the public doesn't like it and they can prove that it's in the county and not in the city, that nullifies their business license or their liquor license or their adult entertainment license and shuts them down. So these things can become pretty tedious, and they become something that you have to get right and may well go to court. And when people go to court like this, the amount of money that surveyors charge is minute compared to what the attorney's fees and the other court costs are. So it's nothing for them to pay enough to make sure that it's right. And I'm not saying that as, hey, it's lucrative, they'll really pay. I'm saying that as, you better get it right, because the other side is going to pay whatever they have to try to prove you wrong. So another thing in the legislature, and we used, in my legal aspects class, we did this. We went down to the legislature, down to the archives, and they brought out some of the old books. Now everything is available on the archives website through something they call the virtual vault. Now here's another area that I had familiar, top of my mind. Sorry that it's all up in North Georgia. This involved a court case from about 4 or 5 years ago, and over on the left, these are the notes, the field notes, the original notes taken 30 of April 1832. So they're running the fourth parallel in this case. So the meridians are north and south, the parallels are east and west. And they didn't have always prescribed procedures, so they would have to go decide how they wanted to cut up the district. They could run it north and south and then east and west, reverse that, or whatever series worked for them. You should also know that a lot of districts, especially in the original Cherokee County, which was probably a fifth of Georgia now, the northwest Georgia area, extending all the way down into Fulton County to up to Alabama, or over to Alabama, up to Tennessee, North Carolina, was surveyed like in 1 year, divided up into lots in 1832. So they had some unqualified surveyors, they had some scrupulous people, they had some guys who had health problems and had to turn around and come back home, but they were charged by the legislature to go survey these districts. So some of them brought back fraudulent notes, some of them did a very good job. The average is a moderate job. This particular section, I didn't find one with a creek, but often you'll find one where there is a stream that's crossing, like that, and they will give distances to those streams running east and west, and you can use those, or old settlement roads, or the old federal road, or an old ferry, or an old, maybe an old stagecoach route that was in place. They would include that as they crossed these parallels running east and west, and the meridians running north and south. So let's take a look at this. So the district surveyors all had a slightly different format. Each district survey note, field notebook, like this, will have a little bit different format. So you have to study it and look at the official district map, which is this over here on the right, and understand it one district at a time. You can go to the next district to the north and it might be a totally different format. Here, this format, like I said, each one's different. You have to figure it out, sort of like cracking a code. This is the landlot. Landlot 69. And what they did, they started the district line up here was the first parallel. The come around with the third parallel, ran east to the East District line, came down a land lot. Now they're running west, actually down here. This is the fourth parallel. So let's start with 69. So you start at the beginning of land lot 69, 14 chains to a chestnut. Here's the chestnut, here's where they plotted the tree. Then in that same line, 69, looks like 21 or 12 or 21.2, that's a little hard to read, to a beech. And right here is a beech tree. Notice he spelled it B-E-A-C-H. And then 40 to a post. So at the end of land lot 69, he set a post. Probably, obviously a wood post. Then going across the bottom of 70, 19 chains to a black oak, 27 chains to a black oak, 40 chains to a post. So across the bottom of 70, here's a black oak, and a post. Across the bottom of 71, 17 chains to a locust tree, 21 chains to a chestnut tree, 40 chains to a post. So coming across the bottom of 71, locust, chestnut, and then post. Across the bottom of 72, 18 chains to a post oak, 28 chains to a black oak, 40 chains to a post on the district line. So he came over post oak, blackjack, the BJ, and then the post on the district line. Then they came down and started running east. Notice here they say they're running west. And now on the fifth parallel, they're running east. So they run 10 chains to a chestnut and 27 to a maple, 40 to a post. There's the maple, there's the chestnut, there's the post, and you get the picture. We won't go through it anymore. I just wanted to run through two different parallels and the break at the district line. Here's each day the district surveyor would sign his name, and his acronym was DS, District Surveyor. So let's stop for a minute and talk about why this is important, when it might be important. Land lots were laid out, at least supposedly, between 1805 and 1832 in Georgia. They didn't have rebar, they didn't have pipes, they didn't have paint, they didn't have metal signs, they had axes. And the Indians had not been removed yet most of the time. Like in 1832, this was 6 years before they even started the Trail of Tears. So this was Indian inhabited territory. The survey crew consisted of several axemen, a compass man, the district surveyor who was the party chief and in charge, at least 2 chainmen, one to carry the front end, one to hold the back end, and usually 2 or 3 members of the Georgia militia with rifles to protect them from an Indian attack. So obviously if they were working and more than 2 Indians attacked them, it could have went badly, but I'm not aware of any instances where it did. Most of these marks were lost. Let's just say that the survey was absolutely perfect and done to a 1 chain tolerance, and each of these land lots was perfectly surveyed. Now, let me stop and point out that these parallels would have very similar notes, obviously. You probably figured that out. The passing calls on streams can be helpful to establish if a landlocked corner is truly correct or not. Problem is, the recognized landlocked corner may be a few hundred feet from where this post was drove in the ground. So what's happened is, a lot of times in Georgia, I'd say 90% of the time, maybe more, the original landlocked lines as placed have been lost, and they've been put back in a place hopefully close, but they've been accepted, surveyed by, deeded by, occupied by for so long that they now control. So be careful on a plat that you don't say original corner unless you can prove that it was the post that Henry Ballersham set in 1832. Otherwise, it's not the original corner. Some people will want you to say that it is, but it's just the accepted landlocked corner. That's where it is accepted to be. Now, I have been in situations where we went back over the notes with passing calls to streams, and we're able to establish within a half chain 33 feet tolerance as to where the original surveyor probably set a post that we could find no trace of. And a lot of times the accepted landlocked corners 20, 30 feet away, somebody got it close, or maybe that's as close as the notes actually were, and that point was driven where the post was. Or sometimes it's 300 or 400 feet away. And a lot of things that you get into. Luckily, this is not something you're going to have to do very commonly at all. And because of the legal doctrine of these lines being accepted for so long a period of time, even if you can prove that the original land lots were somewhere other than where they've been platted in the last 100 years, it doesn't make a big difference in a case sometimes. So that is something that should be included in any class. And in other states, it's very similar. Their original notes in rectangular states are very similar. I've retraced 1820 original field notes of from the Mississippi Territory over in East Alabama. And so it's interesting that they were using the public land system 12 years before Cherokee County was divided by land lots, but yet Georgia chose not to, which you understand why. And that is it. We've covered everything that I wanted to cover in this. I've kept it to less than a half an hour. Hopefully that is more tolerable to the attention span. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. If you have any topics that you wanted to see covered that maybe were not covered, let us know, and we'll go from there. Thank you.